Welcome everyone. It is 6:06 on Monday evening, and you're listening to the 140th installment of the Age Out Angels Radio Hour on www.hamiltonradio.net Channel 2. I'm your host, Greg Rapport. I'm the founder and executive director of Age Out Angels. We're a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. Age Out Angels provides one-to-one mentors to vulnerable youth for the purpose of coordinating the care and services that they need to survive. We try to help young people avoid some of the horrible pitfalls that they're likely to face when they don't have a proper safety net. This program is brought to you every week at the same time, courtesy of Doc G, William Saunders, Ruben Rodriguez, and all the fine people here at Hamilton Radio who allow us to use this airtime. Ruben is on the big board tonight. Robin is producing from the living room. I'm in my home office, and I hope you are snug in your homes right now. So good to have you listening to our program. We've put together what I hope you'll find to be an insightful and compelling view of the child welfare system and related issues that improve our communities. So get ready, because tonight my special guest is Jenny Pokempner. She is the senior attorney at the Juvenile Law Center. And we're going to look at the relationship between the child welfare and the legal system from a slightly different lens than you're probably used to looking at it. Also tonight, it's still Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and in my final words, we're going to talk about the effects of violence in the home on the developing child. If you need assistance or want to talk to someone about domestic violence, remember you can always call 1-866-331-9474 to speak with a trained peer advocate. And please, if you do that, do it carefully. You know that making that phone call can have repercussions. So be very, very careful. And if you didn't write it down as fast as I just said it, go to my Facebook page. It's always there at the beginning of every show. So sit back and enjoy 52 minutes of reality, and hopefully when it's over, you'll be a little richer for having done so. Stay with Hamilton Radio all night for a combination of great music and talk. Rome Brothers are usually following me, talking sports after our show. Always a big day in the NFL on Sunday, so be sure to stick around for that. And now please take a moment. If you're looking at us on Facebook, hit that share button. Or even better, email your whole address book and tell everyone to go to www.hamiltonradio.net Channel 2. Tell everyone in your world what we're talking about tonight, because what you're going to hear applies to every geographic region, including where you live, and this stuff needs to be shared. In fact, tonight I have a special favor to ask of everyone. As I'm sure you are aware, many broadcasting companies are having a rough time generating revenue during this pandemic. Many of my friends in broadcasting are just off the air. And so if you would be so kind to go to www.hamiltonradio.net, and on the welcome screen, you'll see a chance to make a donation. You know, one thing that has always drawn me to this station is that the owners are people with real hearts. I've never seen them turn down an opportunity to help the community, and now it's time for us to return the favor. And this program is such a model for how they will do anything to help, because this is where you come to get the whole truth. And I promise what you'll hear tonight cannot be found on the nightly news. So please go to hamiltonradio.net, hit the donate button, do as best as you can. I understand that these are hard times for a lot of people, and I'm not expecting you to hurt yourself in the process, but if you have a few bucks, help us out. Now, the show is live, and you are welcome to be a part of the discussion. You can write to us in the comments field. I see Maureen Angelica has already been writing in already. Thank you so much, Maureen. And you can also call into the show if you're very brave and you want to be a part of the show. 609-807-2492 is the number to do that. 609-807-2492. Hey, if you're in crisis, don't hesitate to call a free mental health hotline. These resources are available to anyone at any time and exist to help you connect with the right support when you need it. If you're thinking about harming yourself, please don't hesitate to call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255. And again, all of these Lifeline numbers are always posted on my Facebook page just before we do the program. So feel free to go there and take advantage of them. Michael Leach is watching the show. He says hi to you, Jenny. I want to tell all my friends in New Jersey, everywhere in New Jersey, about the Bridges to Employment program. If you or someone you know is currently in foster care or aged out up to age 24, doesn't have a job, not in school, essentially languishing. We'll provide the supports that you need to get your high school equivalency if you need it, or brush up skills if you have a diploma, and get you moving towards a career where you can live independently. This is the most incredible program I've seen in like 40 years. So I believe this comes along like once in a generation or two. Not only is it all free, but you can actually earn up to $1,000 incentives as you progress on your journey to success. Call 609-306-0821 for more information, or email to me directly at greg@ageoutangels.org, or hit me up in the comments field on Facebook, or send a carrier pigeon. There's a million ways to get in touch with me. If this program is right for you, please don't hesitate to do so. All right, so people are so concerned about the children at the border who are separated from their parents and living in cages, and rightfully so. I mean, it makes perfect sense. I'm not saying that their righteous indignation is not warranted, because what's happening to these children is horrible. Remember that a child in a clean cage, no matter how clean the cage is not a cared-for child. But did you know that 3 in 10 Native American children are taken from their families? This is a story that came to me by way of an organization called Imprint that used to be the Chronicle for Social Change. And it says, under legislation introduced in Congress recently, the United States would officially own up for the first time to its attempt to eradicate indigenous culture through its policy of forcibly separating Native children from their parents and civilizing them in Christian boarding schools. I feel like I should pause and just let that sink in for a minute. It's just so bizarre. The legislation introduced in the House by Representative Deb Haaland of New Mexico would establish the Truth and Healing Commission on Indian Boarding School Policy, and would explicitly state that the result of the boarding school policy was cultural genocide. Senator Elizabeth Warren sponsored the bill in the upper chamber. Haaland, an enrolled member of the Pueblo of Laguna, who also has Jemez Pueblo heritage, called the bill the first step toward healing the trauma inflicted on generations of American Indians and Alaskan Natives who endured spiritual, physical, and psychological and sexual abuse at more than 350 boarding schools. Native people are resilient and strong, Haaland said in a news release, but the painful and traumatic history of genocide that forced assimilation by the federal government lives on in our communities, and our people have never been fully able to heal. Football great and legendary Olympic champion Jim Thorpe may be one of the best-known products of these schools, which were attended by hundreds of thousands of kids. Now, is this new information? Well, the widespread removal of Native children from their families was unearthed in the 1960s when a New York-based attorney named Bertram Hirsch was sent to North Dakota to assist with a kinship dispute case on behalf of the Spirit Lake tribe. Hirsch's research on the matter would expose that between 25 and 35% of all American Indian children had been placed in adoptive homes, foster homes, or institutions, and that 90% of those kids were being raised by white people. So we're talking 55 years ago, right? All right, well, guess what? Native children are still in foster care at a rate twice what their proportion of the population would predict. The disproportionality index for Native children in foster care is 2.67, according to the National Center for Juvenile Justice, well above the index of 1.66 for Black children. The rate of adverse childhood experiences within tribal populations is disproportionately high, and so are the rates of Native children in state foster care systems, said Sarah Kastelik, Executive Director of the National Indian Child Welfare Association, adding that the Commission's work could provide a platform to create meaningful solutions that will effectively address historic and intergenerational trauma. The point I think that I need to make here is that if it's not for the lawsuits, this stuff never changes. It just goes on and on. It's hidden. It's swept under the rug. And so it's in the backdrop of that information that I'd like to welcome my guest, Jenny Pokempner, senior attorney from the Juvenile Law Center in Philadelphia. Welcome to the show, Jenny.
Thanks for having me, Greg.
No, it's great to have you here. It just boggles my mind how without the legal actions, and those can take a very long time, things don't really change. How long have you been doing this at the Juvenile Law Center, working there?
About 20 years now.
Is it really? No,
Yeah.
no, no.
Yeah.
You look young enough to be my
Yeah.
daughter, for crying out loud. What made you want to get into this aspect of the law?
I initially thought I wanted to go into teaching, and I thought teaching was one of the ways, and I still do believe is one of the ways that you do make change and give young people opportunities. But I think when I started that training, I kind of figured out that my fit might be more in the area of law and analysis, that I didn't really have the personality and I think the outgoingness that makes a really good teacher. And I volunteered at a legal services organization as a paralegal after I graduated from college, and just found that was where it was an organization that was representing children in child welfare matters. And I volunteered as a paralegal. And when I started doing that, it was just that, feeling of this is the right fit, and that I decided to go to law school after that. And then this was my first job after law school, and was lucky to be able to get it and stay where I am and do this work. So I think it was luck, and then working with a lot of good people who did, I think, show how you could make difference and work with others to make difference to impact youth.
Absolutely. Now, the Juvenile Law Center, that's not a place that you call if the alimony payments are late, right?
No. The focus of our work is young people in the child welfare and juvenile justice system. And we are hitting our 45th year this year. And we definitely have, there's been an evolution in the work we've done. It's always been child welfare and juvenile justice. But when the founder started, Bob Schwartz and Marsha Levick started Juvenile Law Center, they did start with doing direct representation. And over the years, we've moved to do more impact litigation. And we certainly work directly with a lot of young people. We have 2 youth advocacy programs, Youth Fostering Change and Juveniles for Justice. And they really do impact both our work, what we decide to do in terms of like the priorities, but they also do their own advocacy work. You mentioned a lot of resources around mental health. The project they're working on this year is really focusing on the need for more behavioral health services for youth in the justice and child welfare system. So we certainly do work directly with youth a lot, but now we do more impact work rather than individual representation, but still focusing on juvenile justice and child welfare. So like you said, it's not alimony and other family law. It's really very focused on those 2 systems. And ideally making it so youth never need to be in those 2 systems, and that they have what they need with their families and with their community. But then, some of our work is if they do make contact with those systems, that they are treated fairly, that they get the services and support they need, and that they have all the opportunities that youth who are growing up in their own families get. And that's often a challenge, but definitely work we do and want to do with a lot of our partners.
Excellent. Now I'm going to ask you to define impact litigation in just a second, okay?
Sure.
But first, I just want to call our attention to Denise, who wrote a comment in. And Denise, I take comments like yours very, very seriously, and I want you to know, sweetheart, that we are here for you. If you can call into the show now, or you can get in touch with me after the show. But please, if your comment was intentional, please know that you're not alone, okay? I want to make sure that you know that. All right, so Jenny, define what impact litigation is.
So impact litigation is usually seen as litigation that tends to be class-based, so brought on behalf of a group. It doesn't have to be a large group, but more than one person, and that the attempt is really to, as it says, have impact, more systemic impact, so that you wouldn't just affect one person, which is very important and important work. But impact litigation, you're usually trying to make a kind of bigger systemic change so that you can impact a whole class of young people or people in general, and kind of change the way a system works. And you don't, we have examples, and I know you've had other people on the show, Marsha Robertson Lowry, who has always done this work and is one of the kind of groundbreaking child welfare litigators. But you see it in many different fields. It's just one of the ways the law, as you said in the beginning of the show, can be a tool for change. And again, not the only way to make change, but just kind of one of those tools in our different like tool belts and toolkits to try to make some change.
Yeah, so big change. We're talking about big change at the maybe at the state level, certainly, or well, at the federal level. That's tough.
Yeah, and usually you are bringing litigation in your state, but sometimes you're using state law or federal law, and some things do go up to the Supreme Court, and they can make a difference across the country. So it really does depend, but you tend to be doing it in your state. But again, one of the very important cases being heard by the Supreme Court on child welfare in I think the next month or so really will impact children across the country with respect to discrimination in the child welfare system. And so certainly there are some things that do go up to the Supreme Court, but I would say a lot of the cases that we litigate are usually in our states, but often in federal court in our states.
I think because basically states are left to develop their child welfare systems as individual states. That's kind of almost a states' rights issue, I would think. It's
definitely a combination, because all of our states, particularly every state, does receive federal funding for child welfare. And so the Social Security Act Title 40 really does create a lot of parameters and drives a lot of what states do. But you're absolutely right. State law, really does dictate kind of what we do on a day-to-day basis. And there's also constitutional law, which does apply, to youth as well as to adults. And so you have a kind of overlapping, state and federal law that you're dealing with. And again, as lawyers, we try to use both of them, to have, again, a positive impact.
Absolutely. Well, I'm thinking of the Family First Prevention Act, which moves a lot of money around and creates a different emphasis, which I think could be good.
Yes, definitely.
But at the same time, leaves the actual administration up to individual states.
Yes, definitely. And I think that's why when I say we have a lot of different tools and strategies, why litigation can't be our only one. Part of our strategies have to be, we've got this big federal law, and as you said, it really does take states to take action to implement it. And often a lot of our advocacy is in states trying to, encourage the implementation that we think is the one that will impact youth the best. And so Family First is a federal law that really does drive states to reduce and hopefully eliminate group care through financing, saying we're not going to give you federal funds if you use group care, after 2 weeks. Except in these limited cases, but actually making it possible that states actually do, reduce the use of group care, that they provide alternatives. That's work. And I think you need advocates as well as, you said Michael Leach wrote in. He leads the Department of Social Services in South Carolina. The Child Welfare Agency is one of the agencies that he leads. And he's an example of a really progressive, proactive leader of child welfare. And so when you've got him in your state, as an advocate, you're going to be working with him because he wants to do the right thing. And those are these opportunities you have. And we really push as advocates of, to proactively do something that's going to make difference. We'd rather not litigate if we can proactively work in partnership with, whether it be a leader like Mike Leach or other of our partners. You're an advocate in your community. Can we get people to make the policy that is the one that's going to improve things for kids. And often you do have people who are willing to do that, but as you said, like, laws are passed and they don't implement them on their own. They need people pushing.
Absolutely.
And that is a lot of the work we do. It's less exciting than litigation, but it is often a lot of the work that I do. So one other example, more states now do have extended foster care. So more states provide support to young people between 18 and 21. But building that system so it really supports youth, and I know you've seen this because that's why the young people need more mentors and service coordination, because some of our extended care systems are not. They're just giving them 3 more years. And so a lot of the work I do with again, people like you who are advocates also in the community is, how do you make that system support youth better? And again, it doesn't happen on its own. It happens because we really push for it and say it's important, and also describe, like you do, what is a good system for youth between 18 and 21. What support do they need? So yeah, that just is something that often we're doing in addition to litigation.
Perhaps Michael will come on the show at some point to teach us how to do it right. Now, we're going to talk about COVID in just a second, because I want to stick on the federal side of this for a moment. But first, I just need to do a little bit of quick housekeeping here. First of all, Denise, I see you trying to write into us again and again. I want you to take your time, sweetheart, and just collect your thoughts and compose them. We're here during the show. We're here after the show. You can always get in touch with me, okay? Just try to write out what you're thinking in a succinct way, and we'll be here for you. And I want to give a big shout out to Paul Sansone Jr. and his auto mall on Route 66 in Neptune, New Jersey, and the new Sansone Jr.'s Windsor Nissan 590 US 130 in East Windsor, New Jersey. Paul, as you may recall, actually gave a car to one of our foster youth in need. So if you're looking for a car in Neptune or East Windsor, please check him out and tell them you heard about them right here on the Age Out Angels Radio Hour. It's just like Hamilton Radio and Paul Sansone. Whenever you can, remember to support the businesses who support the people. Visit Sansone Jr. on Route 66 in Neptune and the new Sansone Jr.'s Windsor Nissan 590 US 130 in East Windsor, New Jersey. If you just joined us, I'm speaking with Jenny Pokempner, senior attorney at the Juvenile Law Center in Philadelphia. All right, so Jenny, what's happening to young people? Okay, we're going to take a call in a minute, but first I want you to tell everyone what's happening to foster kids. I lost my train of thought, but I got it back. What's happening to foster kids, relating to the COVID, and what is it that you are promoting? Yeah.
Well, I think, all of us are struggling during COVID. And one of the things that I think has been so clear probably to every one of your listeners is that most of us are surviving because of the support of our family. And so I think it just becomes so clear that for young people who are in foster care who do not have that family support right now, they are really struggling. I mean, they don't have that safety net, that ability to go home because dorms closed, the ability to go home for a meal because you lost hours at work. And then just the real fear that we, rely on our family, our parents, our network to help navigate these difficult situations. And I think we really take for granted that there are young people in foster care that just we can't assume that they have those supports. So, through several different surveys throughout the summer and this fall, Foster Club Field Center, who I know you've had Sarah on your show before, I mean, the surveys are showing exactly what we know to be true. I mean, youth, their housing is unstable. They don't have enough food. They don't have financial resources. They're isolated. They don't have support. And definitely some states have been, again, being proactive, like South Carolina has been. Other states have. They're not the only one. But in terms of a real federal response, we've been doing that advocacy. Young people have been leading the advocacy. There have been town halls with National Foster Care Institute has done over 7 town halls with congressional leaders, they've been advocating throughout and saying we need assistance, we need more financial assistance, and we need states to put a moratorium on aging out, saying no youth should age out during a pandemic. Just like no parent's going to push their child out of the house during a pandemic, we should do the same for young people in foster care. And so there is a bill that was the HR 7947, a bill that is a bipartisan bill, which is pretty incredible during this time, this political time. Representative Jackie Walorski and Danny Davis. It has 49 co-sponsors, almost half are Republican. Again, pretty incredible for this really partisan time. And that bill was incorporated into the revised or updated HEROES bill that was passed in the House, the COVID relief bill, about 2 weeks ago, but it hasn't moved in the Senate. And young people really need relief, and it needs to come. We need a national response. Again, I appreciate and really do admire the leadership of some of the states, but youth, it shouldn't be kind of a gamble where you live if you get help. And so we've really been pushing. And again, I will say, this has had such leadership from young people, such leadership. They're telling Congress, House and Senate, we need assistance. And the House has come through, and they have passed the bill, but we need the Senate too.
Absolutely. So your method of reaching the Senate, though, like, you can't sue the Senate.
No, this is just advocacy. I mean, this is advocacy. We are trying to get a piece of legislation passed. And so how we do that is, we reach out to leaders in the Senate. Senator McConnell is the majority leader. We're reaching out to him every day saying, would you move this bill? Member youth in foster care. Senator Grassley has been a real leader on foster care issues about foster youth, and what he prioritizes is really important. So those are two very important senators I would urge your listeners to reach out to and tell them that you want him to move a bill that helps foster youth, and you want it done immediately because we shouldn't make them wait any longer.
Absolutely, absolutely true. Ruben, is our caller still on the line? Ruben, are you there? Have we lost you? There's a long pregnant pause. Always good for radio. to have absolute silence. Well, Rube, if you hear this and our caller is still out there, you can feel free to put I think it's her through at any time. If you just joined us, I'm speaking with Jenny Pokempner, senior attorney at the Juvenile Law Center. So coronavirus relief is a big issue for you right now, but generally speaking, the mandate, can I say, of the Juvenile Law Center right now is to basically eliminate the group home.
So, I mean, our goal is really moving towards, and I think we like to think about the goal in a positive way of, we would like young people to not need systems. We like their needs to be met in their families and their communities. And then if young people are placed in systems, then the settings they should be in with family, whether that be kinship care. Sometimes that's not possible, and then it could be family foster care. But we do think that young people, the best results they will get is to be placed with family. So that does mean radically reducing and working towards eliminating group care. And so I think in both systems, that is what our office is moving towards, because we really think, and again, the work you do shows that, youth need caring adults, and we all need family, and it's not one size fits all, but young people need family to grow up, and that need doesn't end when you turn 18. It might be that you need it more as you're entering adulthood, but that's what young people need. And when we place them in group care, they really don't get that. And as we've seen, they're often at risk for much more harmful situations. But generally, like the first goal really is to have youth with their own family or family type settings.
Absolutely. Now, is there a caller on the line?
Yes.
Hi. Do you want to say your name or do you want to be anonymous?
I could say my name is Denise.
Okay. Denise, you had been writing to us.
Yes, I have.
Well-
I didn't hear all of the conversation prior to this. I'm just coming from a story of my own personal life right now. I'm living I would guess you call a living hell with no help.
Okay.
I'm a single parent of three, two of them in which basically I had gotten remarried. And during the process of the marriage, my oldest one got married as well to a child molester. Molested my youngest one in the mouth of all that craziness. We reported it like we were supposed to and did everything right. Well, shortly thereafter, it was almost like we were targeted. That's the only way to describe it. I was targeted. And found out my husband was having an affair, and he was actually molesting children as well, which I was not aware of at the time. And I've been trying to fight with DSS ever since in this area where I'm at. They tried to charge me with child abuse and neglect, and not for actual abuse. They had no bruises, no proof, nothing, no ounce of proof. Just accusations, people coming in making accusations. The one was my son and the other was my husband, who had motivation because he was being accused of all these other abuses, and retaliation came about. And DSS just believed them. And make a long story short, he and he has connections with DSS, and I highly believe at this point, across the country, we've had different cells in the DSS office of abuse, sexual abuse, and child sex trafficking going on throughout the whole country. But there are hidden cells in DSS right now, in CPS, that nobody's looking at. No federal agencies who are supposed to be protecting these children, protecting these parents, these mothers, these fathers who are single parents who are fighting desperately to get their children back and doing all the things that they require. I have done everything that they have required. I've struggled doing it and what I've had to do to take it. I had to leave my home. I had to basically leave my husband, my full source of income at the time I was working, but then they caused me to lose my job. They literally have called my jobs. I've got proof that they have called my jobs and literally got me fired with accusations, which were unfounded accusations in the criminal court. They dropped the charges in criminal court. But yet, I still have not had my children returned.
What state are you in, Denise? What state are you in?
I'm in South Carolina.
Oh, Michael, are you still listening? Goodness, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to laugh.
No. I know that there's cases in South Carolina, and there's numerous cases, and it's gotten to the point that my thing that I have noticed. This is something that I have just been kind of because I've been in a 4-year fight. Okay, 4 years I've been going through this. My son has since aged out, and now totally alienated him from me. And since then, now I don't talk with him at all. They put him at risk into a child molester's home to stay, and it's like it's mind-boggling to me that they're saying they're for the safety of children, but yet when they have proof, they hide it. Okay, because they have their own agenda. In this particular case, that is the case.
Wow.
My husband had DSS connections. He was calling DSS behind my back and comments and talking to this lady and talking to that lady. And unbeknownst to me, he's talked to the guardian ad litem numerous times. The guardian ad litems go with DSS. They're not impartial. The judges are not impartial like they should. They just rubber stamp DSS's comments. They don't look at the true proof of what's going on. Just this weekend, I reached out to the police department in the midst of a
We lost you, Denise. What happened to you?
I don't know. Can you hear me? Hello?
Where did you go? This is not the first time I've heard a story like this. I'm just going to tell people. Are you there?
Yeah,
you're
I'm
breaking
here.
up. You must be on a cell phone.
I'm
I
here.
heard a similar story where, I heard a similar story in New Jersey where the husband had to leave. He had to leave his home and was gone for 2 years before he was allowed to come back in. It was just amazing. Denise, what would make this better for you? What would you like to see happen?
I would like to see at the first initial hearings to have attorneys at the first hearings that are signed, or not just to sign, but are willing to listen and fight for those parents who are there. That they don't, because they have here in South Carolina what I call the good old boys thing, because they don't want to risk their reputation and their financial deal, so they do the bare minimum. And that is, I would like to see that change. I also I would like them to go back and look at cases for the last 10 years since Clinton signed this crap of legislation, that the parents have no rights. They can literally be accused. I could go to my next door neighbor and say, oh, they have kids, and call up and make accusations, and they would remove the children without any proof.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense at all, does it?
My thing is where's the Constitution? They have literally gone into homes. They came to me without a warrant, threatened my husband at the time, which I didn't know he was having an affair, but threatening him at the time, and he's disabled. I'm disabled. Okay? The majority of the people they are hitting right now are the people who are disabled, who can't defend, that are on fixed budgets, who can't defend themselves, who can't afford what you would call, I guess, a public attorney and everything. And the public attorneys rubber stamp what DSS says.
Yeah.
This is not justice.
Absolutely. Denise, listen, we have to move on, but I want to thank you so much for taking the time to share this information with us. You've given all of our listeners so much to think about here tonight, and boy, it took a lot of guts to pick up the phone and tell your story. So
I'm
let's say
honest
thank
with
you.
my
And
story.
what?
I am honest with my story.
Yes,
now, not
indeed,
everything
you are.
is perfect, but I'm not an angel, but I'm not a rotten parent either.
You are truly standing in your truth, and I respect that. So let me just say thank you very much, and we're going to let you go. All right, and keep listening to the show, and maybe something good will come of what you just said to everybody. I certainly hope so.
Me too.
Absolutely. Jenny.
Well, and Greg, one issue just to bring up is, the issue of having attorneys for parents and children, that continues to be a big issue around the country. But I will say that there was a federal policy change several months ago that should enable more states to be able to fund counsel for parents. So the Children's Bureau did change their policy and say that states can use some of these federal funds called Title IV-E to fund representation for parents in addition to children. And the hope is that that is going to motivate a lot more states to provide attorneys counsel for parents in child welfare proceedings. And we still do need to work on quality of counsel and make sure, counsel has sufficient cases so they can do an excellent job. So there's still work to be done, but it is really important in these proceedings that impact both parents and kids really significantly that they have attorneys helping protect their legal rights. So definitely an important issue, and one that maybe we will see some more progress on in the coming months because of that federal change.
I have to be honest with you. I was just a little bit surprised because the people that I interview are all the good people who are trying to do good things. So I've interviewed several lawyers from different states who are active in representing the biological parents, like even before the petition is filed. And here this beautiful lady calls us up and is, sort of still waiting for her representation to show up.
Right. That's not the norm to have attorneys very early in the proceeding, but that again, that is something that new federal policy made clear that you can do that, and the feds can help fund that. So again, we have a lot of ways to go, but that's at least an example of where there's a federal policy change that, again, it's not just going to make a difference on its own. Advocates, both for parents and kids, for families together, are going to have to push their states to say parents and kids need attorneys in these proceedings that have huge impact on their lives and their futures, and that they're so important. They're impacting the most important relationships of our lives.
Absolutely true. I want to point out that Julia has written to us on Facebook, and she just said, hopefully this can be brought to Trump's attention at the White House, and that was interesting. But the next part of her quote says, hopefully Australia will then follow. Julia, I want you to stick with us because in my final words tonight, I'm actually going to quote some information that came from Australia. I wonder if you're listening from there. Certainly on the internet, anyone can listen around the world. I know we have a listener in Sweden. We have one listener in Sweden who listens to the program. We have about 2 minutes, Jenny. It flies when you're having fun, And so what's next? What's the Juvenile Law Center up to?
So we're going to continue to do this advocacy around COVID to get young people relief. And then on the juvenile justice side, we're doing tons of work. We definitely, like I said, we don't think any young people should be in institutions, but certainly during COVID, youth should not be in detention. We should be trying to get all kids home. It's unhealthy at all times to be in institutional settings in detention, but right now we know with COVID, it's really dangerous. So we'll definitely be working within our state and collaborating with other advocates to get youth released and make sure they're cared for properly. As I said, our two youth advocacy programs are really elevating the issue of making sure young people, particularly teens and young adults, have access to behavioral health services. It's important during COVID. It's important during all times. So that's definitely a huge issue. And I would say, the work that you guys do, mentoring and being a supporter for young people in foster care, we hope to support and improve, expand the work you're doing, because we really do believe in both systems. The more people, young people have surrounding them, supporting them, advocating for them, that's the way you make a difference. So that one-to-one work is always work that we're going to push for and support and think makes a huge difference. Everything doesn't have to be litigation and impact. You can have impact with one young person at a time, and we definitely believe that, and believe that our advocacy has to be part of supporting and making that possible.
I have to say that lawyers in your sector are really the only ones I know who never want to go to court if they can avoid it. Absolutely. If it's the last resort, court is the place of last resort in your business, and it's wonderful to have you on the show. And I'm gonna suggest that everyone go to your website, I believe it's jlc.org, is it?
That's right. Yep.
It's just easy, Juvenile Law Center, but it's jlc.org.
Yep.
And if you're just curious and you have a few minutes and you want to know, like what needs fixing, they have usually a number of articles right there on the front of their homepage that will tell you, what's happening and what needs to be changed. So it's a wealth of information and certainly a wonderful, wonderful organization. This is our last program in Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And I want you to consider what happens to a child in a home where domestic violence is prevalent. When people think of domestic and family violence, they often think of how much it hurts the adult victim. It's true that domestic and family violence is most often violent, abusive, or intimidating behavior by a man towards a woman. But what you may not realize is that children also experience domestic violence, and this affects their physical and emotional health and well-being. Now, this is the Australian information. If our listener is still out there, 1 in 4 children, according to this study, are exposed to domestic violence. Of those women who experience domestic and family violence, more than 50% have children in their care. Domestic and family violence was the most commonly reported issue to what their DCF in Australia is, the Department of Communities and Justice, for children at risk of significant harm, with more than 20,000 reports received. Domestic and family violence is also the leading cause of homelessness for children in Australia. The impact of domestic and family violence on children is immense and can often affect them for the rest of their lives. Children and young people don't have to see the violence to be affected by it. There is also widespread belief among parents and school officials that these troubled children negatively affect learning in the classroom. For example, a nationally representative survey found that 85% of teachers and 73% of parents said the school experience of most students suffers at the expense of a few chronic offenders. Studies show that living with domestic violence can cause physical and emotional harm to children and young people in the following ways. And this list is just going to blow your mind. Ongoing anxiety and depression, and I can tell you for a fact that almost every youth that I know who comes out of the foster care system either is being treated for anxiety or should be being treated for anxiety. It also causes emotional distress, eating and sleeping disturbances, physical symptoms such as headaches and stomach aches. These youth find it hard to manage stress. They have low self-esteem. They are prone to self-harm. They are prone to being aggressive towards friends and schoolmates and then feel guilt or blame themselves for the violence, have trouble forming positive relationships, develop phobias and insomnia, struggle with going to school and doing schoolwork. How could you not if you have half of these other things that I just mentioned? They might use bullying behavior or become a target of bullying themselves. They have difficulty concentrating, finding it hard to solve problems, and have less empathy and caring for others. And then when you think of adolescents and aging out of the program, much more likely to suffer from depression, be homeless, abuse drugs and alcohol, engage in risk-taking behaviors, and experience or use violence, and be controlling and manipulative in relationships. So let's talk about physical safety for a second. Sometimes being exposed to domestic and family violence isn't just a matter of witnessing it. Children and young people are often physically hurt during violent episodes, either accidentally or deliberately. Children and young people need to grow up in a secure and nurturing environment where domestic or family violence exists. The home is not safe or secure, and children are scared about what might happen to them and the people that they love. It was graphically illustrated to me a couple of days ago by someone who said, imagine stepping off a street corner and then realizing a car is coming and having to get back out of the way of that car. And then you step off again and the car comes again. And you step off again and you get to walk a few feet and here comes another car. And that's what it's like for a young person. And if you think about the effects of violence on children by age, it even feels more diabolical, like in utero. An unborn child may be injured in the womb due to violence aimed at the mother's abdomen, or suffer from exposure to drugs or alcohol that a mother may use to cope with the stress. Babies and infants exposed to violence may have difficulty developing attachments with their caregivers, and in extreme cases suffer from failure to thrive. If the toddler phase of preschoolers' development may be affected, and they can suffer from eating and sleep disturbances. A school-age child may struggle with peer relationships, academic performance, and emotional stability, and in the teenage segment, an adolescent may be at higher risk of substance abuse or of either perpetrating or becoming a victim of dating violence. Look at some facts now. We're back to America. Nearly 3 in 4 children aged 2 to 4 years regularly suffer physical punishment and or psychological violence at the hands of parents or caregivers. 1 in 5 women and 1 in 13 men report having been sexually abused as a child between the ages of 0 and 17. 120 million girls, in case you're wondering why there's a Me Too movement, 120 million girls and young women under 20 years of age have suffered from some form of forced sexual contact. Consequences of child maltreatment include impaired lifelong physical and mental health, and the social and occupational outcomes that can ultimately slow a country's economic and social development. It actually does. It affects the economy of the entire country when this happens, because people who would grow up and be taxpayers are not, because they are so affected by this. A child who is abused is more likely to abuse others as an adult, so that violence is passed from one generation to the next. It is therefore critical to break this cycle of violence, and in doing so, create positive multi-generational impacts. Preventing child maltreatment before it starts is possible, but effective prevention approaches include supporting parents and teaching positive parenting skills and enhancing laws to prohibit violent punishment. Ongoing care of children and families can reduce the risk of maltreatment recurring and can minimize its consequences. And on that note, I will say a hearty thank you to my awesome guest, Jenny Pokempner from the Juvenile Law Center. You'll come back, Jenny. Thanks to Ruben on the board. Thanks to Robin for producing. Music provided by Angel Fire. See you next week. We make a date to meet right back here next week. Stay healthy, everybody. Wear a mask. And let's make this week the best week ever. Good night, everyone.